It is likely a revelation to few that much of the world remains a hostile and dangerous place for LGBTQ people, and there is simply no use in sugarcoating this alarming fact. Last week, we took a deeper look at the top 10 countries with the highest public opinion and societal acceptance of our community in the world. But today, we are going to do the opposite and look at the 10 countries with the lowest rates of acceptance and the worst public opinion of LGBTQ people and rights. This is a very important subject as it highlights just how much work still needs to be done in the fight for equality, as many parts of the world still oppose it. Additionally, this information helps us to better avoid dangerous locations and to refrain from buying products made in countries that oppose our right to exist, as the tax money such products generate for the hostile governments is used to propagate their hateful agendas. You may be surprised how often the fruit we eat, the wine we drink, or the clothing we wear actually comes from countries where being queer is harshly punished. Some countries on the list today may not be overly surprising, but I would wager that at least a handful of them will be quite shocking, and for all the wrong reasons. Feel free to press pause on the video and write out which countries you assume will be on this very sad and shameful list. Equaldex and the Williams Institute of Law are the two primary sources we will be using today for our methodology of creating the overall list and ranking. Equaldex averages out a wide array of polls and surveys from respected pollsters to create their public opinion scores, and the most recent edition of the Williams Institute Global Acceptance Index looks at thousands of polls and surveys in order to gauge the rates of societal acceptance across the world. For those who enjoy data and are curious about the methodology, I will leave links in the description for you to explore the resources for yourself and enjoy the full datasets. The first country on our unfortunate list today, and coming in as the 10th worst country on Earth by LGBTQ public opinion, is Ethiopia. Utilizing 10 different polls and surveys from respected pollsters, Equaldex has given Ethiopia a score of just 13 points for LGBTQ public opinion. A 2022 poll found that only 5.58% of Ethiopian respondents said that homosexuality was justifiable, and in 2023, only 12.5% of Ethiopian respondents said that they would be fine with having a homosexual neighbor. Adequate polls on trans and non-binary people are not available, but are also likely to be extremely low, as gender-affirming care is restricted in the country, and changing one's legal gender is illegal as well. The Williams Institute Global Acceptance Index gives Ethiopia a score of just 16 points, and when both scores are combined and averaged, Ethiopia comes out with a final score of 14.5 for LGBTQ public opinion and societal acceptance. This places Ethiopia as the 10th worst country in the world for 2024 by this metric, and while this list will not take legislation into account, it is noteworthy that being gay is also strictly prohibited in Ethiopia and is punished with prison sentences. As public opinion is the 10th lowest in the world, it is unlikely that we will see these horrific laws changing anytime soon in this deeply religious country. Moving now just south of Russia to the Caucasus region, we arrive in the 9th worst country in the world by LGBTQ public opinion and societal acceptance, Armenia. It is ironic, but perhaps not a coincidence, that Armenia and Ethiopia both claim to be the first place where Christianity became the official religion. And although Armenia is considered by experts to have the title of first, Ethiopia does have the title of second in the world to do so. And the fact that both of these countries are also some of the most homophobic and transphobic places on Earth, despite being in different parts of the world, having different histories, and being of vastly different cultures and ethnicities, definitely makes you think about the harmful impact of religion on populations across the world. Making use of 12 different polls and surveys from respected pollsters, Equaldex gives Armenia the staggeringly low score of 6 for public opinion. In 2022, a poll found that only 1.54% of Armenian respondents thought that homosexuality was justifiable, which is lower than in 1999, when 4.35% said it was. So clearly, things in Armenia are not only bad, but getting worse. The Global Acceptance Index gives Armenia a score of 22 for general societal acceptance, and when both scores are averaged, Armenia emerges with a final score of 14. This means that Armenia is 0.5 points worse than Ethiopia and secures itself the 9th spot on this list of shame. As someone who booked a 1-month-long trip to Armenia to save money last summer, as most Airbnbs in Europe skyrocketed in cost, I regret failing to research adequately beforehand, and I wish I had known how anti-LGBTQ the country was before making plans, as if I had known, I would not have given the country my business. This was before I made Queer Kingdom, and before I started dedicating my life to understanding the data and fighting for our community by putting my interests and my experiences to work so others can be more informed than I was and avoid putting themselves in difficult situations. After spending 1 month in the country, it was clear just how horrible the LGBTQ rights situation in the country was, how closeted the community is there, and how hostile the population generally is towards queer rights due to rampant religiosity. While the country has many interesting locations, delicious food, and friendly people, only people who pass as straight and cisgender will feel comfortable in this country, and the situation truly is dire for those who cannot or will not hide who they are. And even if you can pass as straight and cisgender, do you really want to support a country where the rest of our community is not safe? In retrospect, I regret the even limited amount of money that I spent in Armenia, and that is why I am passionate about educating people so that we can do a better job at withholding our financial support from oppressive countries that use the money we spend on tourism or products in stores to fund the expansion of their hateful ideologies. Moving northeast until we find ourselves in Eastern Europe, we arrive to another country that I also unfortunately stayed in, this time for 2 months, also to save money during summer in Europe, and back before I was educated on just how bad things there are. We are talking about Moldova. For those curious, I actually explain in a different video that I will link to in the top right corner of this video exactly what happened to me in Moldova and my own experiences with the hate and homophobia that runs rampant in this country. I won't share the story here again, but for those who are curious, I do dive into it in the other video. In retrospect, if I had been aware of the data, I would not have been so shocked to have the experiences that I did in the country, and honestly, never would have visited for the 2 months to begin with. But once again, this is why I am passionate about sharing this information with others. Using 10 different polls and surveys, Equaldex gives Moldova a score of 8 for LGBTQ public opinion, the lowest in all of Europe and even lower than Russia by this public opinion metric. The Global Acceptance Index gives Moldova the score of 19, which is also the lowest in all of Europe. When both scores are combined and averaged, Moldova ends up with a final score of 13.5. And this means that Moldova is 0.5 points behind Armenia, and is currently the 8th worst country on Earth as measured by LGBTQ public opinion and societal acceptance. And for the Russian and right-wing trolls who will say Moldova is alpha and based, let me remind you that Moldova is the 3rd poorest country in all of Europe per capita, behind only war-torn Ukraine and Serb-sabotaged Kosovo, and has the lowest life expectancy on the continent according to UN data. This is what hate and bigotry gets you. Not blessings from God, but poverty and early death. Moving south now until we are in the southern half of Africa, we arrive in Zimbabwe, a country that is mostly known for its crazy experiences with inflation and Victoria Falls, but should probably be better known for its shockingly intense intolerance and persecution of LGBTQ people. Equaldex utilizes 15 different polls and surveys to determine Zimbabwe's overall public opinion score of 10. One poll from 2022 found that only 5.84% of respondents in Zimbabwe thought homosexuality could be justified. And while not relevant to our public opinion video today, it is worth pointing out that being gay is also illegal for males, but is legal for females, and that the state engages directly in the censorship of LGBTQ activism. Unfortunately, there is no reliable data available on trans and non-binary specific acceptance rates, but one can confidently assume that attitudes are similar if not worse. The Global Acceptance Index gives Zimbabwe a score of 16 for societal acceptance in the country, and when both scores are averaged, Zimbabwe comes out with a final score of just 13 points. With 0.5 points less than Moldova, Zimbabwe secures the shameful title of 7th worst country on Earth for LGBTQ public opinion and societal acceptance. Let us hope that we soon see the inflation of queer rights in Zimbabwe match that of their currency. Moving just a little ways to the north now, we arrive in Zambia, a country that shares a few things in common with the previously covered Zimbabwe, including a shared border, a name that starts with the letter Z, and rampant homophobia and transphobia. Drawing on 10 different polls and surveys, Equaldex has given Zambia a score of 6 for LGBTQ public opinion. Homosexuality in the country is also illegal and punished with time in prison, and in 2023, only 6.6% of Zambian respondents said they would accept having a gay neighbor. The Global Acceptance Index gives Zambia a score of 20 for societal acceptance, and when both scores are combined and averaged, Zambia is left with a final score of 13. This means that Zambia and Zimbabwe are both tied for the 7th worst levels of LGBTQ public opinion and societal acceptance on Earth. And hopefully, in time, things will change, but for now, consider to yourself that visiting the famous Victoria Falls, be it from the Zambia or Zimbabwe side of the border, directly finances governments that literally jail people for being gay, and countries where public opinion is some of the lowest on Earth. Moving to the Middle East now, we arrive in a country that may come as a surprise to many, as we are not in Syria or Iraq, but rather in Jordan, a country that many consider to be one of the region's most progressive. And while this may be true legislatively speaking, it could not be more untrue when it comes to public opinion. Making use of 11 different polls and surveys, Equaldex gives Jordan the score of 6 for LGBTQ public opinion. And it may sound hard to believe, but a poll from 2022 found that only 0.58% of respondents from Jordan thought that homosexuality is justifiable, and while some may assume this abysmal number is due to fear to speak one's mind, the country actually does not criminalize homosexuality and also does allow for gender-affirming care. But despite Jordan having made some legislative progress, public opinion and attitudes towards queer people are some of the lowest on Earth. The Global Acceptance Index gives the country a score of 19 for societal acceptance, and together, both scores averaged out lead to Jordan ending with a final score of 12.5 points. This means that by 0.5 points, Jordan secures its shameful place as the 5th worst country on Earth as measured by LGBTQ public opinion and acceptance, even lower than famously anti-LGBTQ countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Yemen, and Syria, despite it having more progressive laws. Staying in the same general region but moving a bit to the east, we arrive to a country that many of you who made a list of your own at the start of the video likely guessed would make an appearance of shame today. Of course, we are talking about Iran. Taking into account 4 different polls and surveys from respected pollsters, Equaldex gives Iran a score of just 3 points for public opinion, the absolute lowest score in the world on this particular metric. Homosexuality is illegal in Iran and punished with unaliving. Gender transition only takes place when gay men who are not unalived are forced into transition as a punishment, which obviously cannot be compared to real transgender rights, as real transgender people are denied real gender-affirming care, all while surgeries are forced onto gay men. The Global Acceptance Index gives Iran a score of 21 points for societal acceptance. When both scores are combined and averaged, Iran ends up with a final score of 12 points. This means that Iran is 0.5 points worse than Jordan and secures the rank of 4th worst country on Earth for LGBTQ public opinion and societal acceptance. And because I already trust most people are aware of what things are like in Iran and have no intention of ever visiting, I will leave this section where it is. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say my heart truly goes out to all the thousands of Iranian queer people who have lost their lives simply for being born the way they were. Now, before we dive into the final 3 countries on our list today, I just want to invite you personally to become a citizen of the Queer Kingdom and join our quickly growing community. You can officially join the kingdom here on YouTube for $1 a month, which will help me to make this channel my full-time focus as soon as possible. And you will get access to some cute custom queer emojis and epic crown icons next to your comments on this channel that change and evolve the longer you are a member. Check the comments to see if you can spot any existing members in their crowns. It was super fun to design. Also, while monthly live streams will be public, they are eventually moved to the members-only feed afterwards, and controversial videos covering heavy subjects that are not quite YouTube-friendly are also privately posted for citizens of the kingdom so that we can all stay informed. And finally, joining the Queer Kingdom here on YouTube gives you the ability to chat with me and fellow members through access to our new Queer Kingdom members Discord. I greatly look forward to meeting you and working together to create a safe and prosperous world for our people, one step at a time. Moving back to Africa now, to a country that happens to be in the same neighborhood as Zambia and Zimbabwe, we arrive in Malawi. Equaldex draws on 8 different surveys and polls from respected pollsters to determine Malawi's public opinion score of just 5 points. Like many countries on this list, homosexuality is also illegal in Malawi and punished with time in prison, and changing one's legal gender, along with accessing gender-affirming care, is also illegal. And, more relevant to the particular subject of today's video, a 2023 survey found that only 7.3% of respondents from Malawi would even be fine with having a gay neighbor. The Global Acceptance Index gives Malawi a score of 18 points for overall societal acceptance, and when both scores are combined and averaged, Malawi finishes with a score of 11.5 points. With 0.5 points less than Iran, Malawi is the third worst country on earth when it comes to LGBTQ public opinion, and the laws of the country clearly reflect this. Staying in Africa but moving northwest, we eventually arrive in Senegal. Equaldex utilizes 10 different polls and surveys in the country and gives Senegal a score of 4 points for LGBTQ public opinion. It is noteworthy that being gay and changing one's gender are both illegal in the country, and considering that the country receives a score of 3 points for its legislative situation, 1 point less than for public opinion, it is clear that the public opinion and laws of Senegal are united in their persecution of queer people. Last year, a man's body in the country was dug up and lit on fire by locals after they discovered he had been gay while alive. This represents the situation in Senegal and the truly unbearable hate that queer people in the country endure every day. The Global Acceptance Index gives Senegal a score of 19 for societal acceptance, and when both scores from the two metrics are averaged out, Senegal ends with a score of 11.5, making them tied with Malawi as the third or second worst country on earth for LGBTQ public opinion, depending on how you look at it. We end our sobering journey today back in the Caucasus with Azerbaijan, and perhaps one of the few things that unites Armenia and Azerbaijan is their shared hatred for queer people, and them both ending up on this top 10 list for worst countries on earth for LGBTQ public opinion. Taking into consideration 10 different polls and surveys, Equaldex gives Azerbaijan 6 points for public opinion. A 2022 poll found that only 0.44% of Azerbaijani respondents thought homosexuality was justifiable, and only 11.28% would accept having a gay neighbor. The Global Acceptance Index gives Azerbaijan a score of just 14 points, which is the lowest on the metric of any country in the world. And when both scores are combined, Azerbaijan ends up with a final score of 10. This places the country 1.5 points behind Senegal and Malawi and makes them the absolute worst country on earth by LGBTQ public opinion and acceptance. Azerbaijan is without a doubt the most hostile country on earth towards queer people in terms of how its everyday citizens view our community. Let us hope that public opinion rises to match the current laws, which are relatively tolerable as of now, and not the other way around. Perhaps the greatest takeaway from this video is how important it is to be aware of a country's record on LGBTQ rights before buying their products, as doing so empowers their ideology. For example, whenever possible, do not buy produce from Iran or Armenia, like apricots or dates, or coffee from Ethiopia. With these 10 countries, it is not only the government, but also the majority of everyday citizens that oppose our right to exist, and economic and terroristic boycotts are some of the only tools that we can immediately use without government or NGO intervention. The global fight for our survival is far from being won, and we need to stick together now more than ever. And now we come to our queer news story of the week, where we have some troubling news coming out of the African Sahel country of Burkina Faso. Back in 2022, a successful coup took place in the country which saw the government taken over by a radical militant junta with ties to both Russia and to radical Islamic groups. From the beginning, the new rulers of Burkina Faso made their disdain of progressive countries in the West a cornerstone of the radical platform, and with this opposition to the West also came opposition to human rights, and more specifically to LGBTQ rights. And on July 10, 2024, the junta's justice minister announced that being gay would now be prohibited and punished under the law. While this decision was not passed by any parliament or court, the fact the country is ruled by a militant junta regime with total power means that experts in the situation conclude this announcement is now the law of the land, and that ever since July 10th, being LGBTQ is officially illegal under Burkina Faso de facto law. Anti-LGBTQ sentiment is rising across much of Africa, driven in large part to increased Russian activity on the continent, which includes propaganda that describes LGBTQ rights as Western values and as a tool of neocolonialism, even as Russia engages in real neocolonialism as we speak. Local leaders are also increasingly blaming queer people for their economic hardships. So let us hope that in time, the leaders of these countries realize that targeting marginalized communities will do nothing to improve living standards or foster opportunity. It will only lead to more violence, more prejudice, and discourage foreign investment in tourism. Let us hope the rightful rulers of Burkina Faso are soon reinstated and that these horrible developments are soon reversed. Before signing off, I just want to say that you being here means the absolute world to me. And for those interested, you are more than welcome to stay around and join our increasingly powerful community here at the Queer Kingdom as we fight for our future. Until next time, much love and blessed be. QK out.